The house was quiet that evening, almost too quiet. The kind of silence that makes you notice every sound. The ticking clock, the faint hum of the fridge, the wind brushing against the curtains. I was curled up on the couch with my blanket, the one that still smelled like lavender and warmth. Then the front door opened, and there he was. Ethan. Late again. His smile was soft, but something in his eyes didn't match it. And that smell. Sharp. Sterile. Hospital sanitizer. I tried to sound casual, but my voice carried a trace of worry. "You were gone all afternoon. Is your friend okay?" He sighed, long and theatrical, as if carrying the weight of someone else's tragedy. "Yeah, he's not doing great. Caught pneumonia. Poor guy's been in the hospital for days." His tone was gentle, practiced. Too practiced. Something about it didn't sit right, like a line from a script he'd rehearsed one too many times. I tilted my head, pretending to relax. "That's awful." "Which hospital?" I asked, stirring my tea as if it were the most ordinary question in the world. He hesitated just a little too long before saying, "St. Mary's." "Why?" That tiny pause told me more than his words ever could. I smiled to hide the suspicion forming in my chest. "Just wanted to send flowers," I said sweetly. And right there, for the briefest moment, his eyes froze, just before he nodded. He smiled faintly after that, the kind of smile that's supposed to reassure but doesn't reach the soul. "That's sweet," he said, leaning down to kiss my forehead. "But he's not taking visitors. Let's just pray for him." His lips were warm, but his words felt cold. I could hear the slight tremor in his voice, like someone balancing on the edge of a lie. And in that second, I knew. Something wasn't right. As he disappeared into the kitchen, I sat there frozen, staring at the flickering candle on the coffee table. My mind kept replaying his pause, the hesitation before he said, "St. Mary's." He always told stories with detail, names, places, even the color of the wallpaper. But tonight, his words were hollow, carefully chosen, sanitized, just like the smell that clung to his jacket. I took a slow breath, trying to quiet the storm starting to rise in me. When he came back with 2 glasses of wine, I forced myself to smile. Pretend. That's what love teaches you sometimes. To smile even when your chest is burning. He talked about dinner plans, about how tired he was, about nothing at all. I nodded, played along, watched his every move. And deep down, one thought whispered like a siren. He's lying. I can feel it. But about what? That night, I couldn't sleep. Ethan's soft breathing beside me should have been comforting, but instead it felt like static in my ears. Every time he shifted, I imagined the weight of his secrets pressing against my chest. The scent of hospital sanitizer still lingered faintly on his clothes, and it filled the darkness between us. I kept staring at the ceiling, wondering who he really was when he wasn't with me. Every lie begins as silence. And tonight, his silence was deafening. In the morning, he kissed me goodbye as if nothing was wrong. I smiled back like the perfect wife I thought I was supposed to be, all while feeling the cracks spreading quietly inside me. The moment the door closed, I sank into the couch, clutching my mug until it burned my palms. Something inside whispered that I'd just watched the first thread unravel. I didn't know what truth waited for me at the end, only that I couldn't ignore it anymore. The house felt different after he left, emptier, almost watching me back. I looked around at the framed photos on the wall, his smile frozen beside mine, a memory that suddenly felt staged. Somewhere in my gut, a quiet certainty settled. He wasn't visiting a sick friend. No, this was something else. Something far more personal. I didn't have proof yet, but I could feel it. And deep down, I knew. the truth would find me soon enough. The next morning began like any other. Sunlight spilling through the curtains, the smell of coffee in the air, Ethan humming in the shower. But beneath the routine, something felt off. My chest was tight, my thoughts restless. As I walked past his jacket draped over the chair, a small sticker caught my eye. It was half peeled, white with blue letters. St. Mary's Hospital, Maternity Wing. My fingers froze midair. Maternity, not ICU, not pneumonia. The world tilted a little. My breath came shallow, uneven. I held the sticker like it was some kind of fragile truth I wasn't ready to face. My heart hammered as 1,000 explanations flooded in, all of them impossible. He said his friend was sick. He said no visitors. So why the maternity ward? I could hear the shower running upstairs, the sound of water masking my panic. My body moved on its own, trembling but deliberate. I picked up my phone, my hands slick with sweat. My voice barely worked when I called the hospital, pretending to be calm. "Hi, I'm calling about a patient in the maternity ward," I said, forcing a steadiness I didn't feel. "Could you confirm if Ethan Miller visited yesterday?" There was a pause, too long, before the receptionist answered. "Yes, ma'am. He checked in yesterday afternoon for room 214. Room 214. My heart dropped like glass shattering. I swallowed hard, my throat suddenly dry. "And who's in that room?" I asked, trying to sound like I had every right to know. The receptionist hesitated, her tone polite but distant. "A Ms. Laura Jenkins." For a second, I didn't even process the name. It floated through the line like a ghost, familiar, haunting. Then it hit me. Laura Jenkins, Ethan's ex. My knees nearly buckled, and I had to grip the counter just to stay upright. The room spun. My heart was pounding so violently I could hear it in my ears. He hadn't been visiting a sick friend. He'd been at the maternity ward with her. The woman he once swore was just a chapter long closed. I hung up without another word, staring at my reflection in the window. My face was pale, foreign. The air around me felt too thick, too loud. I could barely breathe, as if the truth had sucked all the oxygen out of the room. That evening, I sat across from him at dinner, the clinking of cutlery the only sound between us. My stomach was in knots, but my expression didn't betray it. "You're quiet tonight," he said, forcing a smile. "Everything okay?" I looked up, met his eyes, and lied better than he ever had. "Just thinking about your friend," I said, my voice even. "What's his name again?" He blinked, confused, scrambling for his script. Tom," he stammered. "Yeah, Tom Sanders." His fork trembled slightly as he said it, the metal clinking against the plate. I leaned back, my face calm but my heart anything but. "Funny," I said softly, watching him like a stranger. "The hospital said you were in maternity, not ICU." His hand froze midair. The fork slipped from his fingers, hitting the floor with a sharp, hollow sound that echoed through the room. For a moment, neither of us breathed. He tried to laugh it off, but the sound came out broken. "That's crazy, Nora. You must have heard wrong." But the color had drained from his face. I could see it, that flicker of panic, the desperate search for another lie to climb into. I stayed silent, letting the quiet do the work for me. Silence can be crueler than shouting. And in that moment, mine was a blade. He shifted in his seat, eyes darting anywhere but at me. I looked down at my untouched food, the smell of roasted chicken turning my stomach. My hands were steady now, steady in a way they hadn't been all day. "You're right," I said finally, my tone flat, almost kind. "Maybe I did." He nodded too quickly, relief flooding his face. But I wasn't done. Inside, a different kind of calm took over, the kind that comes right before a storm. Because now I wasn't just suspicious. I knew, and soon he'd know that I knew. The tension in the air that night was heavy enough to taste. He followed me into the living room, his voice shaky, his hands restless. "Nora, listen, I can explain." The words every liar keeps ready in their pocket. I turned to face him slowly, my arms crossed, the air between us cold and sharp. "You'd better," I said, my voice lower than I expected, "because right now, the only thing I can see is you standing in a maternity ward while your ex is giving birth." His face drained of color, and for a split second, he looked like a boy caught stealing, not a grown man with a family. "It's not what you think," he began, his voice cracking halfway through. I cut him off before he could sink into another excuse. "Don't you dare insult me with that line." My words came out steady, but my chest burned. Anger, grief, disbelief, they all swirled together until I couldn't tell them apart anymore. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing, sighing like the world was too heavy for him to carry. "Fine," he muttered finally, defeated. "Laura called me months ago. She said she was pregnant and that it might be mine. I just went to see if the baby was mine." I stood there, numb. The words felt distant, as if they were coming from another room, another life. And suddenly, I wasn't sure if the floor beneath me still existed. "You mean to meet your child?" I said quietly, the words slicing through the air before I even realized I'd spoken them. He froze, looking at me like he wanted to erase everything I'd just said, and everything he'd done. "I didn't want to hurt you," he said finally, his voice trembling. "I just needed to be sure." That pathetic justification, "to be sure," echoed in my head, as if betrayal could sound rational when dressed in concern. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because the pain had nowhere else to go. "You thought lying about a sick friend would hurt less?" I asked, stepping closer. His eyes darted to the floor. He didn't answer. He couldn't. And in that silence, I saw every hidden message, every late-night call, every excuse replay itself in my mind. "You stood beside another woman while she gave birth," I whispered. "Do you even realize what that means?" He tried to reach for me, but I stepped back, his touch feeling like fire. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to disappear. But instead I stood still, cold, composed, dangerous, the kind of calm that only comes after you've been broken in half. "You built this lie carefully, Ethan," I said, my voice trembling but clear. "And you actually thought I'd never find out." His lips parted to speak, but I turned away, my heart cracking in quiet defiance. I walked away from him, my hands shaking, but I refused to let him see it. I could hear him behind me, breathing hard, muttering half-formed apologies, the kind that mean nothing once the truth is out. My eyes burned, but no tears came. It was strange, that kind of emptiness, like my heart had gone numb to protect itself. He had created life behind my back, a secret heartbeat he thought he could bury under a mountain of lies. I stood by the window, staring at the streetlights blurring through the glass. Every reflection looked like a stranger's life, a woman I didn't recognize, standing in a home that no longer felt hers. "You didn't just betray me," I said quietly, still facing the window. "You betrayed the version of yourself I believed in." Behind me, he said my name like a plea. "Nora." But that name didn't sound like mine anymore. It sounded like something he'd lost the right to say. He took a step closer, but I didn't move. "I just needed to see if it was mine," he said again, his voice small now. I turned then, meeting his eyes, the man I once trusted with everything. "You didn't go to see if, Ethan," I said, my voice breaking but steady. "You went to claim it." His lips parted, but there was nothing left for him to say. The silence that followed was heavy, final, like the sound of something inside me closing for good. The days that followed were heavy with silence. Ethan tried to act normal, making coffee, humming in the mornings, pretending not to notice that I barely spoke. But behind my quiet, something sharper was forming. I had no more tears left, just clarity. Betrayal has a strange way of sharpening your vision. Every word, every glance, every absence. I started seeing patterns. And I decided if he could lie so well, I could play along even better. While he slept, I went through his phone, not out of curiosity anymore, but confirmation. The truth was waiting, bold and cruel, right there in his messages. Texts from her. He looks just like you. Another. I'll bring him to meet you when she's not around. My chest tightened, but I didn't cry. Not this time. I saved every message, every photo, every timestamp. Evidence, not of love, but of a life built behind my back. By morning, I had a plan. I smiled when he kissed me goodbye, my face a perfect mask of tenderness. I watched him walk out the door with his same casual lie. I'm visiting my mother. He said it so easily, I almost admired his nerve. But I knew where he was really going, and this time I'd follow. My hands didn't tremble as I picked up my keys. They felt steady, almost powerful, like I was finally steering the story again. I followed him across town that afternoon, the city rolling by in a blur of muted colors and rain-smeared windows. My heart wasn't racing anymore. It was slow, deliberate, like it already knew what it was about to see. I parked a few spaces away when he stopped at a small cafe. From the car, I had a clear view of the window, and there he was, Ethan, sitting across from her. Laura. She looked radiant in that cruel, familiar way some women do when they think they've won. Then she reached into a stroller. My stomach twisted as I saw him. A baby, small and peaceful, cradled in her arms. Ethan leaned forward, smiling softly, brushing the baby's hand with his finger. I felt the air leave my lungs. It was the kind of pain that doesn't make a sound, just empties you out from the inside. I grabbed my phone, steady hands despite the storm raging inside me, and took the photos. Each one sealing a truth he'd never escape. They looked like a family. My husband, his ex, and their child, framed perfectly by the cafe window, like a cruel portrait of everything I wasn't meant to see. But I didn't cry. I didn't even shake. Instead, a strange calm settled over me, cool and precise. Love had blinded me once. Now betrayal gave me clarity. You built your new family behind my back, I thought, and I'll make sure the world sees who you really are. I sat in that car for what felt like hours, watching them laugh through the glass. The way he leaned in toward her, the softness in his expression, that was the face I hadn't seen in months, the one he used to save for me. I wondered how long this had been going on, how many nights he'd come home smelling like that sterile hospital air. I pressed my forehead to the steering wheel, breathing in slow, steady gulps, trying not to let the rage swallow me whole. When they finally left, I didn't follow. I didn't need to. I had everything, the photos, the messages, the proof of his double life. But what I carried most was the shift inside me. The version of me who begged for honesty was gone. What remained was colder, quieter, more deliberate. I wasn't the woman he could deceive anymore. I was the woman who would decide what happened next, and he would never see it coming. That night, he came home humming again, as if he'd spent the day doing something innocent, grocery shopping maybe. He kissed my cheek, asked about dinner, oblivious to the war silently unfolding across the table. I smiled and served him his meal, nodding in all the right places, even laughing when he made a joke. But inside, I was already somewhere else, planning, calculating, reclaiming the story he thought he controlled. Tomorrow would be different. Very different. A week later, the house looked almost romantic again. Candles flickered on the table, music played softly in the background, and dinner was waiting. Roasted chicken, his favorite. I had spent the entire day setting the stage, not for reconciliation, but revelation. When Ethan walked through the door, his smile returned, that same cautious, boyish grin. "What's all this?" he asked, pretending not to notice the chill under my warmth. "A celebration," I said sweetly. "For new beginnings." He relaxed, maybe even believed it. We sat together like a couple in a magazine, the perfect illusion. I poured him a glass of wine, my hands steady, my voice soft. "You're not angry anymore?" he asked, half hopeful, half afraid. I met his eyes, smiling like someone who'd made peace with the past. "Oh, I'm past anger," I said, my tone calm, measured. "I'm free now." The way he exhaled told me he thought he'd been forgiven. For a while, I let him have that illusion. We talked about work, neighbors, even weekend plans. He laughed again, and I found myself watching him, not with love, but fascination. How easily he could perform normalcy after detonating my life. The same man who held another woman's child was now thanking me for the meal I made. It almost made me laugh. But I wasn't here to laugh. I was here to end the show. He reached for his wine again, his fingers brushing the glass with that same careless charm that used to make me melt. But this time, I didn't see my husband. I saw a stranger sitting in the ruins he built. I let the silence stretch before sliding the folder across the table. He looked confused at first, then curious, and finally terrified. Inside were the photos. Him with Laura, the baby, the cafe, and beneath them, neatly placed, the divorce papers. He stared at the images, his mouth opening and closing like he'd forgotten how to breathe. "Nora," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Please, we can fix this." I tilted my head, studying him like a puzzle I'd already solved. "No," I said softly. "You can't fix betrayal." The words came out steady, almost gentle. I'd imagined this moment so many times, but the satisfaction wasn't in the drama. It was in the quiet, in reclaiming the control he thought I'd lost. He pushed the papers away, desperate now. "You don't understand," he said. "I made a mistake." I laughed, not cruelly, but with the kind of sadness that comes when you finally see someone clearly. "A mistake?" I repeated. "You built an entire life behind mine, Ethan. That's not a mistake. That's a choice." He looked at me, eyes wide, searching for the woman who used to forgive. But she was gone. The one sitting across from him wasn't a wife. She was his reckoning. He sat there, pale and trembling, trying to find words that could glue his shattered world back together. I stood slowly, my chair scraping softly against the floor, a sound that felt final. "Don't worry," I said, reaching for my coat. "You'll have plenty of time for diapers and midnight feedings." He flinched, his mouth opening in protest, but I kept going. "You wanted a new life, Ethan. I just gave you the freedom to live it. Without me." My voice was calm, but it carried a finality that no scream could match. I turned toward the door, feeling the weight of the years lift with each step. At the doorway, I paused and looked back one last time. He was staring at the photos again, his shoulders slumped, eyes hollow. "Oh," I added, almost as an afterthought. "Your boss got a copy of those pictures too. I figured he should know where all your sick days went." His face drained completely, the last trace of arrogance replaced by sheer panic. That was the moment I finally felt peace. As I walked out, the night air hit me like a baptism. Cool, clean, honest. I didn't look back. The sound of my heels on the pavement felt like punctuation, each step closing a chapter I'd been too afraid to end. The house behind me was full of lies, but ahead was silence. My kind of silence. the kind that doesn't hide anything. And for the first time in a long time, I knew exactly who I was. Months later, I found myself sitting at a little cafe downtown, the same one I used to pass on my way home from work, but never had time to stop at. The sun was warm on my shoulders, the smell of coffee and fresh bread drifting through the open door. I actually laughed, at something my friend had just said. It felt strange at first, the sound of my own joy echoing in my chest after so long. But it was real, every bit of it. She looked at me over her cup, smiling softly. "You look peaceful," she said. "Lighter." I nodded, stirring my coffee absent-mindedly. "Because I am," I told her. "You know what's funny? He spent all that time chasing his past, and I finally found my future." I didn't mean it as revenge anymore, just truth. A truth I'd earned through pain, silence, and 1,000 tiny acts of letting go. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like someone's wife or someone's secret. I was just me, whole, unhurried, unafraid. The woman who once lived on scraps of affection, now fed on peace. The world outside buzzed with life, and for once I wasn't surviving it. I was part of it. I'd stopped asking why he did what he did. The better question was why I stayed as long as I did. But even that question didn't hurt anymore. It just reminded me that I'd left. As I sat there, the world felt slower, softer somehow. I noticed the little things again. The way the spoon clinked against the mug, the sound of children laughing down the street, the breeze brushing my hair. Life had texture again. My friend kept talking, but my mind wandered to how far I'd come. From the woman who whispered her doubts into a pillow to the one who now smiled at her own reflection. Healing wasn't loud. It was quiet, steady, and stubborn. Then my phone buzzed. I glanced down, expecting a message from work or my sister. But it was a number I didn't recognize. Just a single text. "I'm sorry. I miss you." My chest tightened for half a second. Not from pain, but from the memory of who I used to be. I read the words again, and instead of anger, I felt something unexpected. Distance. Like watching a storm fade on the horizon, beautiful only because it was no longer above you. I stared at the message for a while, the corners of my mouth lifting slightly. I'd waited so long for that apology, but now it didn't matter. The closure wasn't in his words. It was in my peace. The kind that doesn't ask for permission or explanation. I typed back slowly, each letter deliberate, a final act of clarity. "You already have someone who calls you Daddy. You don't need me." My thumb hovered for a second before pressing send. The message disappeared. The screen went dark, and with it, the last ghost of him faded. I deleted the number, not out of spite, but peace. Some endings don't need flames. They just need silence. I finished my coffee, the bitterness grounding me in the present. Outside, the city moved at its own rhythm. Cars, laughter, life, all of it carrying on, just like I finally was. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for anyone to come home. I was already there. As I stepped outside, sunlight kissed my face, and I let it. It felt like forgiveness, not for him, but for myself. I had spent years shrinking to fit into his world, dimming my light to make his shine. Now, the warmth touched every part of me that had once gone cold. I walked slowly, breathing in the air like a woman learning how to exist again. I didn't look back. There was nothing left worth seeing. I passed a shop window and caught my reflection. Same eyes, same smile, but not the same woman. She was stronger, quieter, wiser. I smiled at her like meeting an old friend I'd almost forgotten. Maybe that's what healing really is, remembering who you were before someone tried to rewrite you. The street ahead gleamed in gold, and I walked toward it, lighthearted, unburdened, free.